Hi, everyone. I am Brandy Crooks. I am here today with Rebecca and Colleen, and I'm not going to screw it up this time, with Landon Rainwater Robinson. And we are going to be talking today about estates and trusts and wills and probate and all the really fun things that people don't want to talk about, but should. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here with me and for dealing with my flubbery. I'm really excited about the information that you guys have because I had the honor of being a part of one of your events and speaking at one. Also, I just really believe in what you do. I think it's really important. And for the people I work with, you know, agents and buyers alike, homeowners in general, I think it's so important that we get this information out to people who own homes, let alone other assets. And obviously there's a lot more to estate planning and trusts and wills and all that kind of stuff. So I think one of the biggest questions that people ask is, you know, what is estate, like who should have an estate plan? You know,
that's a great question. So do you want to jump on it?
Start.
So who should have an estate plan, or what is an estate plan? Maybe starting from there. So an estate plan is a set of documents that support you both while you're living in the event of your incapacity. So what does incapacity mean? It means if something were to happen to you and you can't make decisions for yourself, either medical decisions or financial decisions, you've got somebody, a set of documents that you've nominated individuals to take care of those things for you until, and hopefully you do regain your capacity, and then what they also do is support your family or support your loved ones when you pass away, and that's either done through a will or a trust. And both of those plans have other documents that support those goals, whatever your goals may be. When we sit down and talk to you to identify them, what you're hoping to accomplish once you pass away.
And even more, if put it down into the most simple, is people need an estate plan to avoid probate.
And cost,
And the
so
costs
that
and the delays.
Actually is a perfect segue to my next question. And I understand probate a little bit. I understand the headache and the craziness of probate simply because I've worked with clients who had to deal with it, and we were racing against the clock to try not to have, you know, a house foreclosed upon or whatever the issues were at the time. You know, what is probate?
Probate is a court action that is required if you don't have an estate plan. If you have a will or no will, you're going to have to go through the probate process. And basically what that is the court is going to assess all your assets and then determine how they are going to be divided amongst your heirs. And unfortunately, it means it takes all the power out of the heirs' hands and puts it in the courts. So if you want to spend money in probate fees, probate attorney, and time, you're talking about 18 months.
1 to 2 years approximately. Yeah. And it's about, so one of the things I always tell people is that when you hear Rebecca and I, or really anybody, mention the word court, I have an acronym, is to say CCD. And what that stands for is cost, conflict, and delay. And it's across the board, whether we're talking about probate, civil, family, criminal, we're all operating in the same way. But it's the cost of probate. The cost of probate is approximately 5% of the value of the estate. So when we were looking at, this was a couple months ago, at the average home value here in Riverside County, a couple months ago, $600,000. So if we take that 5%, of the value of that home, let's say it's all paid off, it's $30,000 to go through the probate process.
Wow.
So it's a huge number. And that $30,000 is divided amongst the probate attorney, the executor on the estate, the probate referee that has to be brought in on every single case that's paid on the value of the estate. There's the filing fees. The legal field is still trapped in several decades behind everyone else. We have to file legal ads in the paper in the classified section, alerting people. None of these things are cheap. So if it's a priority for you to minimize those costs and your family having to go to court, whether it's a internal conflict of having to go to court and not necessarily two people fighting like we think about in an adversarial situation, but it's not an easy process to navigate having to go to court, especially when someone passes away. That may be the last thing you want to have to go deal with. And then, like I mentioned, the delay, it's 1 to 2 years here in Southern California. Which is a lot.
It is. It's something a lot of people may not be aware of. If you have children, The court is going to ensure all the creditors are settled first. The last to receive any funds are the children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then there's another layer of guardianship. Who's going to take care of your kids now that you're gone?
Oh, so you're referring to minor children. We're not even just talking
minor
to
children.
heirs from senior people who
adult
die and
children.
pass away. We're talking about minor children. They're the last people to get anything. So if you don't have something in place, and I want to talk about that in just a second about what people need to have in place, because they might think they have something in place that protects them, and yet maybe they don't. And I'm going to guess if they don't have a trust and a full estate plan, they probably don't have what's needed to make sure that everyone is protected at the, when you pass away, because it is a when, not an if. It's just a matter of time. So it's literally something that I would imagine every person can benefit from at some point in their life. I mean,
it depends though. So there is a thing called summary probate. So we'd have to take a look at what kind of assets you have. So it's really critical when you are sitting down to establish an estate plan that we talk about what kind of assets you have and know the value of these assets. And that's one of the things I'm talking about, because we see a lot of piecemeal estate plans when people try to do it on their own. And it's not taking into account the assets, the types of assets and what the amounts that you have, like I mentioned before. But there is a probate process called the summary probate, that if you have assets less, and no real estate, by the way. So if you have assets less than $192,000, it's between $192,000 to $198,000. You can do a summary probate where there's no court. There is a directed order essentially, and you could do it within a couple of months rather than that 1 to 2 year time period. So it really just depends on the types of assets that you have and the amount that you have, whether or not a probate it may be okay. You're looking at a very shorter period of time.
Okay, so that makes sense, and that's why it goes back to kind of what we were talking about. Anybody I work with who purchases a home at that point, they likely will want to have something in place to protect that home once, so it doesn't end up in probate and dealing with all of the stuff that comes along with courts, because the courts are so fun.
So fun.
Not that I know anything about that, but anyway. So how do I avoid probate? If I was going into, if I wanted an estate plan, how do I avoid going into probate? What do I need to have into place? I know you mentioned will and a trust. Actually, I thought, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you said if you have a will, you're going into probate still. So how can I avoid probate? Because if I already have a will and I'm still going to probate, how can I avoid that?
That's when you want to contact us. And one, we'll take an inventory and see if you even need an estate plan. Because like Colleen said, there are certain thresholds that if you're below those thresholds, you don't need an estate plan, and we'll help you get your will designed and help you do what you need to do to protect your assets through a will. However, if you are above that threshold, then we're going to certainly sit down with you and go over your options of setting up a estate plan, which a lot of people refer to them as living wills.
Okay.
So an estate plan would then take all your assets. We learn about your goals. We learn about what is important to each person who comes in or family. And then we sit down and help you decide what you need to achieve the goals that you're trying to obtain. So we do more than just some documents.
Yeah.
We actually do long planning. What's the long-term goal? What's the short-term goal? Do you have kids? Do you need a guardian? Who's going to have the funds to take care of your kids while everything is being sorted out if something were to happen to you? And that's when I think you really have to take the time to find a fit that's going to actually work with you and take the time to build a relationship, to understand we're not a one and done. We're very different. We're all about building a relationship. We're, your family lawyer for long term. So we stay with the family ongoing and make changes as things change. As we all know, how many homes does an average person in California buy? And that's why Colleen and I do something so different, is we stay with you, so that if you change homes, we're going to change your estate plan, because that's something that happens quite frequently. Is people write an estate plan, they put it in their pretty little notebook, and it goes on a shelf and it's forgotten. And then they buy, sell, and then something happens and the property they're currently in isn't even in the estate plan.